all y'all. Welcome. Oh, there's Abigail from LSAT Demon. Hi. All right. So Eric and Abigail are here to help answer questions and stuff. We got a lot of continuing students here. We got a lot of brand new students here. I'm going to talk a lot, but I've got two helpers to keep an eye on the public chat. I would love it if people start asking questions in the public chat, making comments. You can also ask background questions directly to Eric and Abigail throughout the class. Abigail's going to put LSAT Demon in the name of in her screen name, so everybody knows for sure that she's with us. And yeah, feel free to talk to both of them throughout the class. If you want to talk to me throughout the class, you can always use reactions in Zoom. Raise hand looks like that. If you queue up with your hand raised, I will call on you and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Now is actually a really good time before I launch into my agenda for tonight, which is, the title is called Surrender to Win. What are you guys expecting tonight? What'd you come hoping to learn?
Can I was just gonna ask about LG revision. Is that okay? Or
go ahead.
Yeah, so I did a couple like full set of logic games, right? And so a couple of the questions I was having really like a lot of difficulty with. I was wondering, so once I try to do a question I'm having difficulty, what's the best way to like review rather than watching the the video, which you said you can watch? But I was just saying, should I come back to the next day or like wait a few days and then come back, or just like, if you this is a question I'm having difficulty with, like
sure. Generally speaking, if you had a harder time with the game, you probably want to review it kind of right away, or sooner the better sort of deal. If you were pretty much okay with the game, but you want to practice it again, that's a good game for maybe putting away for a few days or a week or something and then coming back to it. But yeah, if you ran up against that brick wall and you really just can't unlock that game, I would review it right away, and I would do that with our videos. We have, I think, the very best video explanations, and the cream in those explanations rises to the top because we have upvoting and downvoting for explanations. So the good explanations are going to tend to be higher, but watch a little bit of whatever the highest rated video is. See if it gives you a clue. Hit pause, go back to working on it on your own. Watch a different video if you like, but always remember, hit pause, work on it on your own until you're stuck, and then watch video only to get yourself unstuck. It's really important that you don't just sit back and passively watch all these videos. It's easy to get the idea that you understand if you're just watching an expert do it. But if you if you do it yourself, then that's how you're going to actually practice that skill of figuring it out. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Cool. All right. All the comments in the chat are about letting go of time limitation and stress and focusing on the matter at hand. Take it one question at a time. Take it one sentence at a time. Take it one word at a time. Yes. Caitlin, I'll answer your question real quick. Practice tests, full length practice tests, maybe one per week, but that's kind of a lot, actually. I think I would probably go with more like, so the thing we always ask all of our LSAT Demon students to do is one timed section of each type per week. So then you're doing one full test, but you're doing it in timed sections. That's still close enough. That's going to give you a good idea. That's one data point. It's not more than one data point. It's one data point, and that'll tell you where you're at right now, this second. But the point of doing that is really just to experience the time and get used to the time, not to race the clock, but to get used to not racing the clock. And then the point is to learn as much as you can from every one of your mistakes. You're going to miss a couple questions. I don't want you to. I want you to get them all right. But when you're new and you're prepping, you're going to be making some mistakes. And then the critical part is after time's up. That's the important part. What you do once time is done because now you have these golden opportunities to learn from the mistakes that you've made. So just make sure that you're not doing, because it's a pretty common mistake, actually. I see Tara asking for broad pitfalls to avoid. One broad pitfall to avoid is doing too many practice tests, not learning enough from those practice tests. Just doing lots of questions and not actually really learning anything. Blind review, I see you, Kayla and Siegfried, asking about blind review. My comments about blind review are, I really just want to say, I don't think that people do it right. I love it if you can blind review the ones you've missed. And all I mean by that is review it without knowing what the right answer was. But I see people frequently go, yeah, okay, I'm blind reviewing. I know I missed this question. I'm going to do it again. And then they get it right the second time. And then they go, well, that's the end of my review. Cool, victory, I win. And the problem with that is that unless you could explain it to me, I just don't really believe that you, somebody's got an open mic. If you could just be careful about that, please. If you do the question again and get it right, but you can't really understand why you picked the wrong answer you picked the first time around, why you didn't pick the right answer the first time around, like just getting it right on a second go is not good enough. And in fact, it might mean almost nothing, because you do the question again, you know you missed it the first time. It's pretty easy maybe to remember, well, I picked that last time, so I know that's not it. And now it's like, well, okay, you've removed the most attractive wrong answer. And of course you're getting it right the second time. Don't think that means you understand it, though. Dig in deeper to your mistakes. And that's really what I think about blind review. I hate blind reviewing an entire section. I would never do an entire section twice. I think it's ridiculous to redo all the ones that you got right. If there were one or two that you know you struggled with and you want to review them, even though you got them right, that's great. But I think you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck time-wise by just really digging into the ones that you had time to attempt, but you didn't get them right. Surrender to win. What is the topic of today's class? It's about letting go. It's about, many of you are tainted by other LSAT prep. You've read books, you've taken classes, you have strategies that you developed in high school and college for dealing with exams and for dealing with reading. And you need to let go of a few ideas. Number one being, you really should not even have a goal of finishing the sections. I know that's hard for many of you to accept. But finishing the sections while missing more than an occasional one means that you're not really, you're just not getting paid for the work you're doing. And I hope, and I know from experience, that if I can convince you to let go of that, I can transform your LSAT score. It's pretty much universal. If you can really honestly let go of this idea that you have to finish the section in order to score well, and if you instead start seriously attempting every question one at a time, focus on accuracy, make sure you're doing good work, you're going to get paid for that work. And you're going to start to see how easy the LSAT can actually be. I've said it 1,000 different ways. I'm going to keep saying it another 1,000 different ways. It's the one thing I know I'll never stop saying until I, die as an LSAT teacher is y'all need to slow down. And I know that, you took a class from somewhere or other that taught you these time management techniques like, hey, I have X amount of time and there's, Y amount of questions. And if I take Y amount of questions and I divide it by X amount of time, then that gives me an amount of time per question. Or wait, maybe it's the other way around. Divide the time by the questions. Anyway, you're going to get a time per question, and I don't give a shit how that math works out. I believe it's something like a minute 45 per question, but I really don't care. And that's the last thing you should be thinking about. Instead, you should be thinking about answering this one right here and getting it right. So you're going to have to let go of the idea that finishing the section is even like that should even be on your radar. It absolutely shouldn't be on your radar. You need to do one question at a time, get them right. When there's 5 minutes left in the section, you're going to get a warning that says, hey, there's 5 minutes left. At that point, you can go ahead and click a random guess for every question remaining in the section. You'll get 1 out of 5 of those right just from random chance. Then go back to whatever question you were working on, because you still got 5 minutes left. Go back to whatever question you were working on, get that one right. And then maybe you have time to get one more right. Eventually the time's going to be up. If you follow our advice, you're going to be doing fewer questions, but more time per question, meaning you're going to be able to understand that question and get them right. And you're going to assemble a long string of correct answers at the beginning of your section. Which, by the way, there's no way to score in the 170s if you don't do that. Like if you don't have, so there's no point in finishing the section and missing questions. You really have to be getting paid for those questions along the way. Tenzin, did you have a question? You had a hand up there.
Yeah, you kind of just answered it, because I was going to say, what if you're aiming for like high 160s? It's kind of, I would feel like it would be kind of important to manage your time, because you won't be able to get a high score if you're not able to do.
And that is directly wrong. That is just exactly 1,000% wrong. It's not best for your performance today, and it's also not best for your performance in the long run, because it's focusing on something other than the matter at hand. And I believe that the LSAT is easy if you let it be easy. The way you let it be easy is by focusing on one question at a time and making sure that you're getting it right. Anything, if you're ever thinking about anything else, including time management, which people teach you to follow, if you're paying attention to time management, there's a part of your brain that is not applied to the task of answering the question in front of you. And if you're going to compete with other LSAT students in that way, you're going to lose. You're going to lose to the people who do it our way. The people who do it our way are going to do fewer questions, but they're going to get more of them right. Before I forget, I want to point out that there are 4 blog posts on the syllabus tonight, and all 4 of them, I think they say the same thing 4 different times in 4 different ways. It's basically, let me try to convince you one more time that you need to focus on accuracy instead of focusing on speed. We have a teacher for us. He's not on the calendar right now, but Carl, who's at Yale right now. Carl was one of our students. He eventually ended up scoring not 169, Tenzin, but 179 on the official LSAT. And Carl did not finish his reading comprehension section. The point I'm trying to make is that not only do you not have to finish sections in order to score in the 160s or the high 160s, you don't even need to finish all of the sections to score in the 170s or the high 170s. What you do need to do, though, is get the easy ones right. How can I focus on the easy ones? how do I make sure that I'm getting the easy ones right? Anybody? I'm agreeing with everything in the section except for I do not believe that you should skip questions that are hard. I also do not believe that you should try to not spend too much time on tough questions. Here's the truth, y'all. On logical reasoning and reading comprehension, well, logical reasoning especially, the easiest stuff in the section is at the beginning, always. That's not to say that there isn't sometimes like a hard question in the first 10. But you're not scoring 170 something if you routinely miss anything in the first 10, and probably not even if you miss anything in the first 15. Or, yeah, you're not going to miss very many in the first 20 if you're going to score perfect, if you're going to score in the 170s on the LSAT. Logic games, many people think that, and you're taught to do this by Kaplan and Princeton and other, I think, terrible LSAT programs. You're taught to look at each of the 4 games, categorize them by type, and then think about which types or which games are easier for you, and you're going to do those ones first. Or, another way of looking at that is you're going to find out, you're going to look at the 4 games and determine which ones are hard for you, probably based on type, which honestly makes no sense. And then you're going to do the games out of order. You're going to do the ones that you like first and then save the ones that you don't like for last. Just a garbage strategy. Just the worst strategy. Like, that's a great strategy if you're taking the test tomorrow and you did no prep. But taking the test tomorrow with no prep is stupid. Like, you're not going to do as well as you could anyway. It's this like, it's just a half-assed, like, I don't know. It's like I find it condescending, honestly. Like, these prep programs are telling you that you're not smart. They're telling you that there are certain types of games which are not going to be good for you. They're giving you this idea. I mean, at the beginning of the section, they want you to go through the 4 games and then, oh, well, can't do that one. Nah, can't do that one. I'm going to try these ones. And the double whammy on that is that probably the first game is the easiest. On average, the games do increase in difficulty as you go deeper into the section. So, and I have examples of this. There are frequently, like, there'll be a sequencing game. I'll never forget the one that has Washington, LA, but it's got 6 cities, and it looks real simple. It just looks like a basic sequencing game, but it's a game 4. And it turns out to be by far the hardest game in the section. And if you had scanned that section looking, oh, I'm good at putting things in order. Well, you're not on that game. You're not, because that game is not going to be susceptible to all of the like real easy solutions that you've seen before on sequencing games anyway. So I'm going to just figure out game 1. I don't care how long it takes. Then I'm going to figure out game 2. I don't care how long it takes. Then game 3, if time allows. Then game 4, if time allows. And the irony is that I'm going to be the one who's going to make it through the section, because I'm not going to waste time, waste energy, waste like mental calculation, brain cycles on this constant time management exercise, which so many of you do, including, wasting 3 minutes at the beginning of your section to go through and figure out which game you want to do. That's so dumb. I've heard of people like, oh, I'm going to go do the acceptability question, the first question in each game, that list question. How about if I do the list question for all 4 games first and then go, because those are easy questions. Oh my God, are you kidding me? You don't want to dip your toe into like one system of rules, then jump out of the water, go dip your toe into another system of rules, then jump out of the water again. It's just, there's like all these strategies that they're so stupid. And I hope I can convince you that what you really need to do is just get to work on the first game in the section, which is probably the easiest one. Get to work on the first reading comprehension passage in the section. That's probably the easiest one. Get to work on the first logical reasoning question in the section, because that's going to be real easy compared to the shit that you're going to see late in the section. Somebody talk to me, including Eric and Abigail, if you've got thoughts. Jubal.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, with respect to completing all the questions in the first, shouldn't we have like with some sort of cutoff time where like if I'm stuck with a certain question, it's like
No.
taking too much of my time?
No.
No cutoff times at all.
No.
Okay.
Because look, let's say you spent 3 minutes on a question. What if another 15 seconds is going to unlock that question? How do you know it's not? I'm not talking about like sunk costs, really. I don't want you to think about, well, I've already spent 3 minutes on it, so I have to keep going until I get it right. I don't think that that's the right way to think about it. I don't want you thinking about time at all. I want you thinking, do I understand the passage? Was there an argument there? If there was an argument there, can I say why the argument is bullshit? Because the arguments on LR are 90% bullshit. So if there's an argument there, what's wrong with it? Can I make an objection? When you make that objection, now you can proceed to the next step. Read the question. What are they going to ask me about this argument? No matter what you ask me, it's probably related to my objection. I mean, I told you why the argument is bogus. So now if you want to ask me a strengthen question, a weaken question, a flaw question, an assumption question, whatever you want to ask me, it's fine, because I know what's wrong with the argument. Once you read the question, you can revise your prediction as a strengthener or as a weakener or whatever. Go into the answers, and this is where you get to go fast, is you get to cut through the answer choices because you've made such a good prediction. The wrong answers, you don't have to understand every single wrong answer. You just have to understand that the right answer does in fact answer your question. And if you don't get to that click, you're not done. You got to stay there. And, Jubal, in 3 minutes, maybe you narrowed it down to a 50-50. I think that happens a lot. You guys narrow it down to a 50-50 a lot? Yeah. That's because you're too passive. You're not active enough. You're not reading the passage well enough. You're not attacking the arguments well enough. You're just not making good predictions. Instead, and it's human nature, I'm going to say that you guys are lazy when you do this. I don't mean that you are personally a lazy person, but it is intellectually lazy. It's like cheating on a rep in the gym. You're in the gym, man. You're lifting weights. Of course, you're not lazy. But if you're cheating on your form, it is being lazy in that respect. And so Jubal, if you narrowed it down to a 50-50 and then all of a sudden you're like, well, wait a second, I'm at my 3 minute time's up. I just gotta pick one of these. Students frequently pat themselves on the back like, yeah, 50-50, that's good. I eliminated 3 wrong answers. Well, okay, but the value of going from 5 answers down to 2 really only improves your expectation on that question from 0.2 of a point up to 0.5 a point. You're going to get a 50-50 right half the time. You were going to get a random guess right 1 out of 5 times. So your expectation goes from 0.2 to 0.5 by narrowing it down to a 50-50. But if you're able to turn that 50-50 into, oh, I figured it out, I got there, I now know what the right answer is, I can see, oh, okay, I see why that other answer is wrong. When you do that, you've improved your expectation from 0.5 all the way up to 1.0. So you get 0.3 of a point for narrowing it down to a 50-50, but you get half a point for taking that 50-50 and turning it into, yep, that's the right answer, not that wrong answer. And I know you guys, when you feel like you've already spent too much time, you very frequently just, 50-50, that's good enough for me. You pick one of them, it's a punt, you move on to the next question. Guess what? Half of the time you're going to miss those. Half the time you get them right, which sure, fine. But half the time you get them wrong. And with 15 more seconds or with 30 more seconds, you might have unlocked that question, which is vastly higher value than moving on and doing another question where you haven't even read any of it yet. All right. Hopefully I'm trying to get through. I'm getting through to some of you. We'll go Caitlin, then Daisy.
My question just has to do with like when it comes to timing and then the logic game section, because that was the hardest section for me.
Okay.
First studying for the LSAT. So I just focused on not timing myself and just trying to understand. And now I get all the questions right usually, and I understand it really well, but I'm very slow. Like it'll take me like 25 minutes to work through it. So I guess my question is, how do I how do I have hope that I'm gonna get faster? Because I can't imagine like going through 4 different games in like for 10 minutes each game, I guess, but I don't want to focus on time, but I just don't know how I'm supposed to get fast, you know?
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. I'm sure that's a real common issue. I like Daisy's point here that accuracy is speed. I believe that 1,000%. If you just and Caitlin, 25 minutes to get a game. If you get them all right, I'm gonna go, okay, like high five. You're figuring it out. If you did the game in 8 minutes but missed 2 of them, no high five. Like you're not, because you're not doing it. You're not actually solving the question. I don't give a shit how fast you do it if you don't do it, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Like imagine your lawyer is like, hey, I got that contract. It's already good to go, ready to go. Boom. I'm the fastest lawyer in the world. Here's your document. And then it's just riddled with errors. Well, that lawyer gets paid 0 for that work, just like you get paid 0 for a game that you rush through or a question that you decide to skip and don't answer because you know, oh, that seems hard to, okay, well, that's a 0. Eventually, Caitlin, if you do more games, you're going to find out that games is the easiest section on the law school admission test. I mean that sincerely. Like, I know that many of you are really, really struggling with the games. Okay. So some of you are like, if I do a game section, I get 4 points in 35 minutes. I know that's you, some of you. Take it one game at a time. I've seen students go from 4 points in 35 minutes pretty quickly to, hey, you know what? That first game, I got them all right. It took me 20 minutes, but then I got them all right. And then I went to the second game and I got some of those points too. Well, shit, you've already gone from 4 points up to 10. Congratulations. If you can go from 1 perfect game to 2 perfect games and then guess on the rest, you're already scoring somewhere in the teens. From 2 perfect games, you go to 3 perfect games. From 3 perfect games, you go to 4 perfect games. The more games you do, the more you're going to realize, hey, even though every game is different, they're also all the same. They always give me all the information I need to answer every one of the questions perfectly. And if I can just do that, just take my time and just solve it, then eventually you're going to go faster and faster and faster. We got 400 games to play with, Caitlin. How many do you think you've done?
I've only been studying for a month, so maybe like 30, probably.
Yeah, right. So good start, right? But you
Yeah.
really haven't scratched your surface, haven't scratched the surface on how much prep you can possibly do. This is an excellent opportunity to demonstrate to the law schools how hard of a worker you are. They know that it can take time and effort to ace the logic games. Probably not one law school admission person aced the logic games. Like they're not in the admissions office because they like killed it on the LSAT. I don't want to insult people in admissions offices, but I'm telling you that if you talk to admissions folk, they're going to be like, oh, the LSAT is so hard. And it's totally not. All you have to do is just take the time with it to let it be easy. And if you're not already scoring perfect on the games, it's because you haven't put in the work yet. Like, talk to me after you've done 100 or 200 or all 400 of the games. And if you do all 400 of the games and you're still not perfect, nothing's stopping you from doing them again. Ala, who teaches for us, she says she did I think she said she did every test and every game like 3 times. I don't think she did every test 3 times, unless she did. But she did do every game 3 times. But hey, next thing you know, 170 something, and Ala is going to pick her school. I mean, she's going to name her price, which is going to be probably $0 unless she goes to Harvard, Stanford, Yale. All right, Daisy, you've been patiently waiting.
Yeah, I didn't really have a question. It was more like a comment. Like, I did what Beth and Ala did. Like, they met through the demon, I think, and like they were study buddies. And so I met someone on here like through the demon community, and like me and him get together and study LR. And like you were talking about, like when you get to 2 answer choices, like I think this last week when we were doing our class, me and him, like we were like, well, what it's one of these 2, but we were like, well, what would Nathan say? Like he would say that one of these answers is completely trash. And so I think that's really been helping me like stay on track of like getting rid of 4 answers, because 4 of them are garbage and 1 is the only answer that can be.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say that, like, I feel like it can feel like you're like, oh, they're wrong, or like it's not that easy, or like this question for sure, these 2 answers could be it, but no, like 4 of them are for sure wrong for some way or another.
That's an excellent point. It's just not a test of second bests. It's not about like, oh, well, this one's good, but this one's good too. And, I'm supposed to pick the best one. So, these are both good though. But yeah, I'm going to pick this one. No, one of those answers is straight up wrong. It's not that it's just not quite as good. It's wrong. It's objectively wrong for a reason. You guys frequently fight with the test. You argue with the test, like you're reviewing a question and you're like, well, this is bullshit. Nah, there's no way that it could be that. I mean, this other answer over here, it's so arbitrary. People sometimes go, it's so arbitrary. It's not arbitrary. As soon as we explain it to you, you're going to go, oh shit, my bad. Yeah, there's no way that could possibly be the answer. Let's hear from Eric.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. I saw a question in chat earlier, or rather a statement by someone saying that LR makes them doubt their common sense. Yeah, wonder if you wanted to comment on that.
Well, can I hear why? To me, LR is common sense. I mean, it's like entirely common sense. Once you learn how to play the game, that's all it is common sense. You don't, did you guys know that you can score like really high on the LSAT logical reasoning and reading comp and games with no prep whatsoever? Like, did you know that some people just roll up and score like high 160s with no LSAT knowledge? That's because there is no LSAT knowledge. It's a test of fact. I mean, it's a test of like how well you can read. There's documentation on the page to support whatever answer you're going to pick. It's not like you needed to have some weird arcane knowledge or training at the Hogwarts LSAT school. You need to practice reading better. You need to read the questions better, understand what they're saying, tell them why they're full of shit on logical reasoning, and then just answer whatever question it is that they're asking you. But it's not like, oh, there's a trick here and that's the answer because of some weird LSAT reason. And this one is obviously attractive, and it would be right, but this is the LSAT, therefore it's wrong. No, that's not how this works. It's a test of English, logic, how hard you can work. Read carefully, figure that shit out, and then do that a lot, and your LSAT score will skyrocket. What's the, can somebody say more about the LR, why LR makes you doubt your common sense? I'm still confused about that. Maybe we'll get more information on that. Oh, go ahead.
I actually said that.
Good. Hi.
Hi, my name is Mabel.
Hi, Mabel.
I said that because when I'm reviewing the questions that I got wrong and I look back, and I look at the explanation, I'm like, oh shoot, like, okay, that does make sense. But then like initially when I'm answering it, I don't pick up on that. So that's why I feel that I doubt myself. Like my common sense, if I'm not getting it right initially, I have to like look at the explanation to figure out why I got it wrong.
I think it's just a matter of detail orientation, Mabel. I think if you slow down, read it more carefully, take your time with that question, I think you're much more likely to get it right the first time through. If you're talking about the facepalm moment, when you review your mistakes and you look at it and you're like, what the hell? What was how I know obviously that's better. Well, okay. I think you were just being sloppy because, again, you had to make 2 mistakes to miss that question. It's not just, oh, the right answer makes perfect sense. I see. Yeah. Okay. But look, when you did the question, you picked a different answer. That answer doesn't make sense. That answer is bad. That answer does not answer the question. So how did you pick it? Were you reading it sloppily? Did you go too quickly? Did you, I think you either misread the passage or the question or the wrong answer you picked, and probably also the right answer that you did not pick. Like you're making multiple errors per question when you miss a question on a multiple choice test. And I think it always just comes back to slowing down. Caitlin, don't worry at all about running out of practice questions. It's very common, but look, we got 10,000 of these questions. 10,000 of them. You're not going to run out. Even if you do run out, you can do them again. It's fine. Just jump in there. Just go for it. Let's do Rashida and then Callie.
Hi, Nate. So I've been a part of the Demon, I think, since August or September, one of them. And I had to learn that. You would say that to us a lot, and it's like we need that tough love, like get it together, slow it down, stop being stupid, those things. I know I may have a moment I may break down, but it was good for me because it got me on my game. And it's so like now I'm using your method of saying like, you could read this, like it's not making any sense. So get rid of that. And it's like, oh, this is BS because it goes against what the author is saying, something, someone. But it's like now I'm learning that, and I finally scored a 150 in a full test. Yeah, finally. Now I've been on and off with it because it could be kind of discouraging. I've been going at it for 4 years. So I just think that the method and what you tell us is just to slow down and really read it carefully. I know with me, I'm always a fast pace because I think also because of my profession, it caused me to be a fast thinking and do this and da-da-da-da. So with this game, it literally humbles me with this test, it humbles me and teach me to slow down and really pay attention to what the author is saying. So I wish I would have learned this before taking Kaplan and all the thousands of dollars that I've spent on this. And even with the LG games that you do, like the tutoring that you have, we can watch the video. Now I'm doing like 18 correct. At first, LG, I hated with all my might, with a passion.
Yeah.
Seriously, like it could go kick rocks at the time, but now I'm focusing more so on RC. So, thank you. I want to say thank you for really being hard on us, because sometimes we need it. And another thing, this is a question: how do those of us who work, because I try to make all of the sessions, I try my best. I try to move my meetings around to make sure I'm in the classes. So how do we deal with that? Those of us who are professionals and, we have a family, and how, should we go on every class? I mean, how should it be done? Because I don't want to burn out again. And I think that's another thing that happened to me. I literally burnt out, because I thought I'm supposed to be studying every day. So if we ever get the time, because it's like, I don't want to miss it, but at the same time, it's like I could get burnt out again.
Yeah, you can't be a completionist about our LSAT classes. We have way too many classes, Rashida. There's no way you're going to go to every single one of our classes. It's like you signed up for a gym and you're going to all the classes. That's not what you do when you sign up for a gym. You pick the class that's going to work for you. And we offer many different classes, different days, every day of the week. We have multiple live LSAT classes on Zoom. And I would really encourage anybody to just try it for 1 month. But I like Melissa's 1 class a day idea. You do need to remember that you got to do your self-studying, So Rashida, you just did a full test. You have a lot of reviewing to do. And if you come to my class later tonight, there's going to be questions there that you're going to need to review potentially after class. So I would, don't be giving your self-study like short shrift just so that you can come to every single class. They are all recorded. And if there's somebody that you really love and you want to make sure you see that class, you can definitely watch the recording of that class. But the self-study part, you can't cut that out. And you obviously also can't cut out your job and your family and all your other obligations. So I think you need to find like a couple hours a day and go to whatever classes you can and do your self-study, and then do, your normal work. Your normal life, including work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rashida. As far as being tough on you, Eric's nicer, Abigail's nicer. Everybody that you talk to here at LSAT Demon is like nicer than me. I'm very direct, and I made my niece cry yesterday when I was doing math tutoring with her on Zoom. I felt terrible. She's a sophomore in high school. She broke down halfway through the math tutoring. But eventually she ended up at the end of the tutoring, she was laughing. And she was laughing about how easy it was. And the reason why I sometimes rub people the wrong way, I think it's actually because I have really high standards for you. I believe that you can understand this shit. And when I keep saying to you, it makes perfect sense, your errors are coming from not reading carefully enough, you need to read more carefully, read it again, read it again, read it again, please. I piss people off when I do that until they do read it again, and all of a sudden it makes sense to them and they go, oh, that's what you've been saying. Like, I think I could put it on my tombstone. Like, I'm sorry I made you cry. It's really just because I knew you could get it though. It's like, I'm not trying to be a dick. I just totally believe that you guys got this. Let's go, Callie, and then Raina.
Yeah, less of a question, more of a comment as well. I really had a hard time like believing this approach of accuracy over speed in the very beginning of my studying, especially taking some advice from other people and some, even successful people who took the LSAT and got high scores, and they're like, just do multiple tests, like keep doing it. And then I did, I think, like 3 to 4 tests a week, and that was a huge burnout, and also, quickly hit a plateau and wasn't improving. And then, I think your approach really was helpful in the way that I understood, one question at a time is just so much better and so much easier. And it's also a change of mindset for me, believing that I can get this right. And it's just a matter of speed and not, speed and accuracy, like focusing on both of them. Was very helpful. And also I think in the short run, it did help like to focus on speed. Oh, like I need to get all of them right to like kind of get the best that I could in this whole test, but kind of forgetting about long run. Oh, like I need to improve and think about how doing that wouldn't help at all in terms of improving over time was very helpful as well. So yeah, the method really won me over time, but it was a hard counterintuitive thought I think in the beginning.
Yeah.
Helps. Yeah.
I just think it's because of training that you get elsewhere, or habits that you fall into elsewhere. It's just, this is lawyer shit, man. We're in lawyer world now. Lawyer world is like, it's harsh. It's not, people are always shocked that I'm willing to tell people that they're wrong. It's like, well, have you ever met a lawyer before? Because the lawyers are going to tell you 1,000 ways that you're wrong before breakfast. Like it's just, we're in a fact-based realm here. The words have meaning. It means what it says what it means. And when you're missing questions, it's because you didn't really do it. And I know you're like, no, but I totally did it. I read everything and I got up to these 2 answers and I picked that and it's the wrong one and it sucks. And FML, this test is so confusing. No, you confused yourself because you didn't read it properly in the first place. I can guarantee you on a logic game, if you think you set it up and then one of the questions is just unanswerable, that's just 1000% guaranteed you misread something. You failed to read one of the restrictions in the game. You didn't understand one of the definitions in the game. You didn't understand the exact wording of the questions that they were asking you. There's something there that it's this tiny little simple thing. And you just have to hang in there long enough to let it be easy. So maybe that's one big takeaway. All right. Like, I think this is a tip that can lead to immediate improvement. If you find yourself struggling on the test ever, you need to remind yourself that it should be easy.
Yeah. And
that if it seems impossible, it's probably because of something that you're just not understanding. Like I've seen people beat their heads against the wall on a logical reasoning question. And they're like, but this answer strengthens the argument. And this answer also strengthens the argument. And this answer also strengthens the argument. How the hell am I supposed to pick here? There's 4 good answers here. There's 4 of these actually that strengthen the argument. And I go, read the question again. And it says, each of the following strengthen the argument except. And so it's like, yeah, I get it. It was like impossible for you to figure out that question because there's 4 good answers, but that's because you didn't read the question carefully enough in the first place to realize that it's an except question. Eric predicted it in the Tenzin, your question, and then Olivia, hopefully before I have to bounce out of here.
Okay, first I want to say thank you because I feel like you changed my perspective a lot. And I've been studying for about 4 months and I'm taking my second exam for the cycle of 2023 in January. So it's kind of too late for me to sign up. Well, it's not that late, but I can still sign up for it. But I just wanted to ask if you can demystify some of the myths. Like, for example, there's so many programs that say like you should read the question first, and then there's other programs that say that's the last thing you should do. Like there's so many myths, and I feel like as someone who's not that experienced, it's hard to
Sure.
see which one is credible and which one is not because people perform differently and everyone
Sure.
has a different method. So if you could just demystify some like crazy myths that are out there.
Well, read the question stem first is the worst advice anybody ever gave for the LSAT. I have blog posts about that. I have podcasts about that where I've talked about it at length, but that's kind of the poster child, actually. I talked about it in a logic games context, right? Beginning of the section, figure out which games are hard, which games are easy, then do the easier ones first. Total bullshit, because you can't tell which games are hard and which games are easy without actually doing them. Logical reasoning, the reason why people teach read the question first is because they want you to question select. They want you to skip, for example, they want you to skip parallel reasoning questions, which I don't think is a very good strategy. Parallel reasoning questions, especially when they occur early in the section, are very easy. I believe that that's where it came from. And it is like, that is fundamentally 100% opposite of how we teach logical reasoning. Okay, if someone says read the question first, I'm like, you don't understand logical reasoning. You just don't. You're making it way harder than you need to make it, because I'm predicting answers just from the passage. You can't predict an answer from the question because you haven't read the passage yet. But frequently, if you read the passage and attack it, you know the answer before you ever even get to the question. I can predict the question type frequently. They'll set up a mystery and I'll go, oh, I bet it's going to be a paradox question. Sure enough. And oh, by the way, I've already come up with some answers for the paradox as I was reading the passage. Other times I'll read fact, no argument. And I'll go, oh, I bet this is a must be true question. Sure enough, they just ask me, hey, which one must be true based on these facts? And if I'm doing it right, I've already been connecting the facts together as I read. I don't know if I can really convince you just like that, Tenzin, that it's better not to read the question first, but I would encourage you to give it a try. Take full advantage of whatever Demon resources you have access to. If you're a live subscriber, come to my classes, ask questions. If you're a free subscriber, there's still a ton of stuff that you can do there. There's like 250 LSAT questions. I think it's something like 10 logic games, tons of videos, tons of written explanations. I would encourage you to make the most out of the free account that I know every one of you has to have at least a free account to be here. I want you to use that free account. Use the free account, see if it feels like we're speaking to you. Now, if it doesn't feel like I'm speaking to you specifically, if you're like, fuck this guy, I don't like this whole thing, well, then that's fine. I mean, that's why we have a free thing that you can check out. But if you do it, if you go through our free stuff and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, whoa, that was easier than I am used to, or wow, that explanation really clicks with me and it's memorable and it makes perfect sense. If you find that, then I really think you should just do it our way. All right, Olivia, rapid fire, and then I got to get out of here. Eric will finish the answer.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not even really like a question. I just like maybe this will like help somebody. I was studying like 2 years ago with the Demon, and I was like doing like 6 hours a day every day while also being in college. And I was actually like getting decreasing scores. And I like gave up because one of the tutors was like, you're 20, do you actually want to do this? And I was like, good idea. So I'm like back 2 years later and I just don't take it as seriously. And my diagnostic, after I still kind of remember some of the things I remembered, but not like making it life or death. My diagnostic went up like 20 points and I'm like still increasing now.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's an easy test to teach because it's a test that makes perfect sense. Like it just, you need to unpack the questions you need to solve. I love the word solve. Okay. It's not about guess. This is not guess and check, multiple guess. It's solving. That's what we're going for here, is solving. And if I can convince you to just slow down and do one question at a time and solve it and feel really good about it, then the sky's the limit on how far you can go. You guys, like, people do improve by 25, 30 points on this test sometimes. It might take a lot of work, might take time. You might have to invest some money in it if you're going to sign up for one of our paid plans, but I think you will find that it is well worth the time and effort and money. Because that's where full ride scholarships end up coming from. You know, my mission in life is to keep you from paying for law school. And I think I can do that by showing you how easy the LSAT is. That's enough of me. Eric is going to hang out with you. Eric, go ahead and take over. I am going to go to my class. Bye.
See you, Nathan. See you, Abigail. Hey, everyone. My name's Eric. I am a teacher and tutor with the LSAT team and have been for several months now. I've been on the team, did my own study with the LSAT team in a little over a year ago at this point. I'm currently applying to law schools. I also produce and edit the podcasts that Nathan do. So I've been with the team for quite a while now. Going back to, I think it was Tenzin's question earlier about demystifying some of the things that you hear about this test. I think that many of those bogus strategies always come down to ways of doing the test faster, based on this idea that you only have so much time and it's not enough time. So you need to approach the test in a way that optimizes your speed. And I would say if ever you get a whiff of if there's a strategy where there's a whiff of that reasoning for why you're supposed to do it, because it will help you do the test faster, then that is not focused on understanding the test. And I'm here to tell you that you can forget all of that stuff. You can forget about how long it's taking and instead focus on understanding. And with practice, you're just gonna like accidentally and without noticing it, start to speed up, because that's what understanding gets you. So if there's a strategy which is like, you're supposed to do the LSAT this way, as opposed to this is a strategy for better understanding what you read, then I think that's sort of, to me, the dividing line of whether or not that's a tip you should listen to or not. Is it typically comes down to being concerned about how long you're taking, which we just don't do. As Caleb says in the chat, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Absolutely. Particularly on the games, in just slowly, methodically, simply approaching your diagramming, your world building. And I still remember the experience of feeling like I took forever on a game because I was just doing it slowly and smoothly. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, that took me like 6 minutes. Really? I thought that was forever. Would love to take more questions from you all. If you've got more, you can I can try to catch up on if anything has been going on in the chat, or you can still raise your hand in Zoom. Happy to talk about the LSAT or about admissions or whatever. I'm going through my own admission cycle right now. Yeah, Susie, what can I help you with?
Hey, Eric. I have a question. I know that you often talk about sort of taking some of the strategies and logical reasoning and transferring them to other sections. And I was just kind of curious, like, we've kind of talked about LR a lot tonight and some people are struggling there. And I have this weird thing where I'm doing okay in games, but LR I'm sort of struggling with. And I noticed that piece of understanding and engagement is a lot more present in the LG section than the LR. And I'm just wondering, do you have any tips? I'm thinking of big things like, okay, when you talk about understanding and engagement, I'm like doing things like repeating it or rephrasing something in LR, kind of like one would do in the games. And I don't know if this is a time thing or if you have any other tips to help broaden my like practice of the LR, because for whatever reason I can get engaged and latch on to the games, but when it comes to LR I have this really terrible like, I'm trying to care but I can't care, so but I gotta care and I gotta engage the way I do with RC, and interestingly enough RC and LG are my stronger ones, but for whatever reason I'm weird like that. LR is not, but it's anyways. Any feedback?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson that I took from the games into the other sections is the mentality that there is just one right answer.
Okay.
What I mean by this is when you probably had this experience. It's like, I remember this as like the worst possible feeling on the LSAT is when I took the time to do my game setup and I got to a could be true question. And I start going through the answer choices, and there are multiple answers that could be true.
Right. Okay.
And I'm like, and not for a second did I think, hey, there are two good answer choices here. It's no, the game is perfect. Oh, there's only one answer choice that could be true. I screwed up my setup somehow. And that mentality I think realizing that RC and LR are the exact same way, it's like it doesn't immediately make sense that that might be true because they feel more vague and more subjective. But if you can, for me, that was sort of the big mindset shift that I took away from LG into those other sections, was accepting that in just the same way that the games are like perfectly constructed, like gems, those questions are the same way. And that if it's down to like multiple answer choices and you're just not like it feels like there could be multiple good answers. It's not because there are multiple good answers, it's because you messed up your setup.
Yeah.
You didn't read closely enough. So I think recognizing that like every sentence in an LR prompt is basically like a rule on the games.
Okay.
And that they are going to fit together in an exact way to provide one correct answer is a super useful mentality.
So
and then
objectify those sentences and objectify those premises and try to fit them.
Or just recognize that they like only lead you to one correct answer, and that you have to refuse to pick ones that don't match the rules. And then the other big thing is just having kind of a attitude going into LR. I think LR is the one, and you have probably seen Nate do this. LR is the section where you can really kind of bring a screw you attitude, and be like, no, convince me. Convince me. And that goes a long way.
Okay.
I hope that helps, Susie.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. Jabal, you got a question?
I've already done around 15 PTs in a different platform. Is it possible to get the data over to LSAT Demon if I want to analyze? And what sort of analysis on my questions and the drill sets and PTs does LSAT Demon provide? And how do what should my optimal strategy be if I want to move from the like mid 160s to 170s?
Sure. I don't think there's an easy way of like transferring your test data over, unfortunately. I have heard of some people who went through the trouble of like going through and doing it manually, but even that's not going to be perfect. That's going to like screw up some of like how the AI views your drilling. I wouldn't worry too much about it. In terms of the like analytics that it would provide, the Demon, as opposed to other platforms, we don't get into any real, like, we don't advocate for getting focused on particular question types. We're not going to give you analytics like, oh, you have not done well at strengthened questions, so you should do some of those. Or we're always thinking that you should study like the whole test at once, and that any difference in like insufficiency in particular question types, which I know makes up a lot of the like analytics platforms on for other prep companies, it's probably mostly a result of like a small sample size and maybe some self-fulfilling prophecy. We think that what like questions are hard independent of what type they are. So the analytics that you would get really just go into like the AI, the drilling AI behind the scenes, kind of gauging on a pretty simple level what difficulty of questions you should be getting in any of the sections. And that gets fed the more you drill and the more you do time sections in the Demon. But there isn't a ton of analytics that's like surfaced because we just don't think you need them. In terms of like a strategy of getting from the 160s to the 170s, I think the biggest thing, if you haven't already, is getting perfect on the games. We believe that the games are the easiest section to master. And if you aren't at -0, if you're in the 160s, but you like haven't yet gotten reliably to -0 on the games, then that's a huge part of what's going to get you over the hill. And we believe that our method of world building, which is pretty different from how a lot of people's approach the games is we think we do it a really good way. It certainly helped me get to perfect on the games. Hopefully that helps you. Cool. Question here from Sarah in the chat. How often would you recommend doing 4-section PTs versus 3-section PTs? I don't think it really matters. The guys did a very quick podcast episode about this a while back. We don't even think that you need to do full PTs all that often. I know of other demon teachers who basically never did them, who just did individual time sections and then kind of calculated their PT scores based on those by putting them together. I would say you should, whether it's a 4-section PT or a 3-section PT or just 1 section at a time, you should do whatever is going to give you, whatever's going to lead to amount of review that is like manageable in a short amount of time. If doing a full 4-section PT and you're scoring in the 140s means that you have like days of review material, and by the time you finish your review, you've like forgotten why you picked an answer in the first place, it's probably you shouldn't have done that. If just doing 1 section at a time means that for the questions that you review, you have some insight into like why it was that you were thinking that way, so you can address that thinking. It's like, oh, okay, I remember now what my mistake was, so I can fix it. That's going to be better. You're going to learn more from that than from sitting through a full 4-section PT, I think. Jessica, you got a question?
Yes. Really more so, I'd like what suggestions would you have about when to attend the live classes? I'm more so on the beginner's level. So I don't want to feel like I'm just up in the air with my study plan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is that the live classes also all publish VODs afterwards, so you can catch them later if you need to. I would say maybe check out some of the VODs ahead of time. Like, we all have kind of different teaching styles, and some of us just might resonate with you better, and some of us might be the kind of people you actually like want to ask questions with live. So if you like gravitate towards certain teachers, go for it. If you check out my VODs and you're like, I just don't really jive with the way he interacts and teaches the test, no sweat. There's like so much other things you can engage with. I think someone else mentioned earlier that they recommended maybe 1 live class a day. I think that's a great idea. I see a lot of students who seem to like be coming to as many classes as they can, and thank you, because you're helping to give me a job. I appreciate it, but also I question if that's the most efficient use of your time. You need to leave time for self-study and for doing that drilling and time sections on your own. So if you're just getting started, we have foundations levels classes. There's LG Foundations to get you up to speed on our world building approach to simple games. RC Foundations, LR Foundations, those would probably be a good place to start. And then from there, you'll have a sense of like where you think you need a little more effort, or where it would be helpful to ask one of us questions live, whether that's on LR or RC. And you can kind of build an approach from there. But I don't think you need to be too particular or like exact about your like study schedule. Just like put in some consistent time every day. And just be honest about where you need work, and I think you're going to be fine.
Okay. And to add on to what you were just saying about the, I think it was the foundation studies. Is that included with the free level, or is that part of the live sessions?
Yeah, all the classes would just be live. There are occasional free classes like tonight, and sometimes Ben or Nathan will teach a free class that actually touches on real LSAT questions from the free tests, just from like 3 or 4 of them that exist. But any of the live classes would be part of the live tier. If you want to start with basic or one of the non-live platforms, then it really is just about start drilling, do one question. And the more you drill in the daemon, it will keep track of like what the appropriate level of questions to present you with is. So the idea is to really take, you want to be spending less time like putting study blocks on your Google Calendar and like determining what to study which day of the week, and like just get in there and do one question and then do another one. Thanks, Jessica. Caitlin, what can I help you with?
Mine is just a quick question about, you mentioned you're applying for law schools now or
Yep.
something. So I'm hoping to go to law school if I get good LSAT scores, not this upcoming fall, obviously, because that would be late, but the next one is when I'm hoping to apply
Great.
for. But I'm just wondering what your general timeline is for how much time you're gonna, like, you've given yourself to fill out applications, because right now I'm just focused on get like a really good LSAT score in April or July, I think is the one after that, and then worry about that afterwards. I know they apply early. I just don't know if like 2 months or 3 months is a realistic amount of time to give myself to just focus on applying, if it's like really time intensive, or what your experience is. Or what you
I would
know.
say so. There's the LSAT is the big thing. Everything else doesn't take a whole lot of time. I think there are some tasks, which there are some tasks that you can get started on. Like you could request a letter of rec today if you wanted to. Those things, it's good to give your the people who you're going to ask letters from plenty of time in advance, like months ideally, because you don't know that they're all going to respond very quickly. So you want to, like, you might have to remind them, ask politely. That you can start right away. Personal statement, you know, you can probably draft a personal statement in a week and then take another week or two to polish it, revise it. Could be that your first topic is actually doesn't work out, so you try it again. I think the most time consuming part of the applications besides the LSAT was, yeah, just like the writing that you had to do with the personal statement. I don't think you need to worry about giving yourself like more than a month on that, because it's ultimately not crucial. It's like pretty far down the list of most important things. In terms of my timeline, I studied in the like fall of last year and had my final score in November. So then I basically just had to, you know, like in the spring, I requested my letters of rec, and then I just, over a long period of several months, got everything together for September. But yeah, a number of the pieces of the process you can do simultaneous to your LSAT study. It's not that big a deal. And then when it comes to like submitting applications, you know, some schools will require supplementals. You can often find what they're like, quote unquote, like optional essay topics are online before applications open, so you can get a head start. But otherwise, the LSAC website makes it relatively easy, ports over a lot of your information directly into the applications if you've already done a previous one. So like you can knock out multiple applications in a day if you're not like writing more info for them. The actual like filling in and submitting an application for many schools shouldn't take you more than like an hour. It's pretty simple. Cool. Elizabeth asked in the chat, should we review questions that we skipped? I think you should do the questions that you skipped. Yeah, if you're talking about like a timed section and you didn't get to all of them, you left some blank. Yeah, those are still practice questions. If you didn't actually attempt them, then that's an opportunity to have another practice question. You should totally do that. Anything else while you got me here? To chat about my LSAT experience or general admission stuff? If not, can call it for tonight. Just double check. Oh, there was a question earlier from Justin. Speaking of applying for law schools and scholarships, is there a possibility you can talk about general information about that? Would it mainly be based upon your LSAT scores, or would it be best to begin searching for scholarships in law schools while studying for the LSAT? That's a good question. The bulk of your merit scholarship, if you get one, should just be offered to you based on your LSAT score up front. Is the person who asked this question even still in the room? I'm not sure. I don't know that they are. Oh yeah, you're there. We're going big game hunting with our LSAT scores. The big game out there are the like merit scholarships that schools just give you based on your LSAT score. Schools have their own individual scholarships that you can apply to, some of which might come with like a binding agreement. Like there are a number of schools that have scholarship applications that require you to commit to the school. If you know that that's your number one choice, maybe that's for you. But for the most part, the scholarships that we talk about, they're just going to come automatically based on the strength of your LSAT score and your GPA. There are other smaller scholarships offered by the schools or by organizations outside of the law schools that you might apply to. Some of it, like your local bar might have some particular thing that you qualify for. You write an essay and they might give you $5,000. I mean, sure, but that's small potatoes compared to the 100K plus scholarships that they'll also just give you right away based on your LSAT score. And then, of course, there's need-based, which is a whole other thing. You do need to submit, schools will require that you submit a FAFSA to determine your eligibility for need-based aid. So that's a different thing. Hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of the kind of the landscape of scholarship and aid options out there. So yes, there are like specialty scholarships that you can look for, but it's not the focus. It's not like where you're really going to shine. Gopi, you got a question?
Hi, Eric. Yeah, I have a question more so on the application or submitting applications part. I'm taking my LSAT in January, and up until just this month, I didn't feel ready for the exam. I finally broke through and reached my score, and I've been scoring in that consistently. So
awesome.
I feel prepared for January. But I don't have an LSAT score on my file already.
Okay.
I was thinking of applying for this coming fall, but I also know that is a little, there is no timeline. I know that, but most schools say March is priority. I just wanted to see, what is your feedback on that? Do you think that does it hurt me to apply later in January or after I receive my score, hopefully, meeting my goal, or do you recommend that I, do something to change that?
You're going to find schools that are going to, you're going to find schools that will admit you, and some we will offer you some scholarships if you apply after January of this year. But you can be assured that you're not allowing yourself like your best shot at it unless you apply a little bit earlier. We say apply in September, apply at the very beginning. I think there's realistically some flexibility in that, in like whether it happens in October or whatever. But I do think that when you're pushing into the spring months, schools have already just given out lots of scholarship offers. They just have less to offer you. The other thing, but I think maybe more importantly, is that committing to just January, I don't like if you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to get your score on that one test. And I didn't take the LSAT one time. If I had stopped after my first attempt, I would have gone in with a lower score than I have. I don't think any of the LSAT team and teachers currently took the test just one time. And that's not even necessarily because you're not ready for January. It's just, even if you're ready, stuff can happen on the day. And you know from your practice test scores that they vary across a range, right? And you might score at the bottom of your range. And if you, I think, just accept that, hey, it's probably a better idea to apply next cycle instead. First off, it gives you the opportunity to take the test more times and get a better score because of that. And also just knowing that you have the option to take it more times will mean that you will be less stressed on the January test.
Okay.
So I think that would be the big reason for me.
Like I'm currently doing my master's, but like I feel like from August to now, I've really kind of pushed myself with it, and it's improved. Like my score has really improved. But even in November, like I didn't feel like I was fully ready to hit that score. And then like this past month, I've really seen improvement. So
Nice.
I haven't taken it yet. So, you never know, like the day of. So yeah, that's definitely good to have my options open.
Stuff happens, stuff happens. And I think you don't want to find yourself asking the question, what if, later. So thanks, Gopi. Question from in the chat. Did prep at a previous company, they taught to diagram specific LR questions. Is that ever useful? It might be occasionally. I basically never diagram on LR. And it's not something we teach at the Demon. And we generally don't think that there are occasionally questions that are sort of like LR questions that feel kind of like the logic games, if you know what I mean, where maybe you might diagram something. I'm not going to tell you to never do it, because I don't like the LSAT Demon's teaching philosophy is generally not so dogmatic. But I think for the most part, you don't need to diagram on LR. Caleb, you got a question?
Yeah, so going back to that last question before, does it hurt to apply for this cycle? Say you were to get denied at some schools, does that hurt your future applications at all? Or is it worth the shot just to try to apply anyways if you're looking to go in the fall?
If you reapply, you mean the next year to the same schools?
Yeah, correct.
I don't know for sure. I'm not, part of the problem is that the only information that we have on this it's explicitly answering these types of questions comes from the law school admissions offices themselves, and they have their own motivations, and you can't fully trust them on what they say about law school admissions. I would think they'll certainly still have your old application on file. I think if you apply, it depends on what is in your application. If they deny you and you reapply next year, they're probably going to look and they're going to say, well, why did we deny him last year? And if it's because you wrote something dumb in your personal statement, and we say that personal statements generally aren't the most important thing on law school applications, but I do think you can sabotage yourself by disclosing something in a personal statement or an addendum. So if there's something like that, which was the reason why they didn't admit you, then yes, I think that could be a problem. If they ask, well, why didn't we admit them last year? And they can go back to something like that, then it's probably not good. That said, if the reason they didn't admit you this year was you had a bad LSAT score and you improve your LSAT score, then I think you're just a different applicant. And I don't think it'll hurt you that much that you were denied the previous year.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I think all things being equal, probably better to not have a rejection the first time around. But if you can just improve your LSAT score, it's probably not gonna hurt you. I think the bigger danger is less that you might sabotage a reapplication process. Honestly, the bigger danger is probably you're gonna get some acceptances and some scholarship offers, but they probably won't be as good as they could be. But once you get them, it's gonna be really hard to say no and to walk away from that believing that you could do better next year. So I think that is the bigger danger, is to tempt yourself with inferior offers than you would have gotten next year if you just took some time to improve your LSAT. Cool. Checking. Let's see. I think that about covers everything that was in the chat. Any other questions from those of you still with me? Thanks so much for hanging on. It's been a pleasure having you here and talking. We do this every 2 weeks, and usually I'm around for them. So maybe I'll see you next time as well, or I'll see you in class sometime. Yeah, Jacob, you got a question?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm always like this
No
for
worries.
almost every single class that I do, like just always wait to the last second just to not be embarrassed, is that when everyone's so focused on getting the higher score in the threshold, I'm just concerned about what law schools are actually strong enough to build a professional career where you're not so worried about the prestige of a certain university. So just for me to give an example, like from my background, I'm from Illinois. University of Chicago, University of Michigan are large Midwestern schools that dominate the area. And I went to the LSAT that was hosted by the event. None of the Ivy League showed up besides Stanford. And with the hot water that they're in and just the representation of those high echelon schools I wanted to know, like, how much of a tangible difference is there between the actual education that's being provided by these schools as opposed to just the network connections that you make from affluent or promising backgrounds?
I don't think the education is that much different. Look, I haven't attended law school, so I don't know for sure. And I'm less of a law school and even a law school admissions expert. I'm not an expert in those things. I'm less knowledgeable in them than I am on the LSAT itself. But from everything that I've heard and from my impression, your education will be largely the same. The ABA dictates like what you have to learn, particularly in the first year of law school. And the classes that you take are going to be the same. You're going to be learning the same shit. Whether you go to Harvard, whether you go to U of Chicago or U of I or Urbana-Champaign, you know, it's you're taking the same classes your 1 L year.
Okay.
They will have different. Yes, to answer your question, yes. Then the difference, I think, is what summer jobs are you gonna get? What connections will you have coming out of law school? What firms are going to show up to your on-campus interviews? That's going to be the difference.
Just
that said,
I have one. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah. So really, what it comes down to is like, what type of lawyer do you want to be? What kind of job do you want? And like, I know for me, the kind of work that I want to do, I don't need to go to U of Chicago.
What if you don't want to, if you don't mind being personal, what do you want?
No, sure. I'm interested in public interest work, or work in the government. I have a particular interest in like labor law and employment law. And I don't want to go to big law. I don't want to, I don't want to represent I don't want to be in-house. I wouldn't want to be in-house. I don't want to represent a corporation. I'm not looking to get into that line of work. Not saying that like people shouldn't do that, but it's not for me.
Yeah. Would you say like smaller schools, like considering your background and your idea of not going to like the biggest schools, would I know litigation is just superfluous through all these schools, but like for antitrust, for example, like I feel like that's somewhat similar to like somewhat oriented with policy work, with being involved with the government for the Department of Justice, and just to have certain types of that's just what I'm going to ask. Yeah.
I would say, I mean, one instructive exercise could be find a local law firm or two that engage in the sort of work you'd be interested in. Go to their page, go to their like directory, and look up where their people went to school.
Yeah.
And like, I'll guarantee you where you are, like those real respectable law firms are full of people who went to the local law schools. You know, for me, like around here, I live in Sacramento, and pretty close to the big Bay Area schools. UC Davis is close by. There's also McGeorge, which is relatively lowly ranked, but actual law school here in the city of Sacramento. And you look at some of the local law firms, and there's tons of McGeorge grads. And the people who I know, like a lawyer who I know who works in local government, is like, yeah, McGeorge is all over the place. Like you don't need to have gone to Berkeley to work in the state capitol. So I think that's the main thing. It's like, what is the work that you want to do? Find a firm that does it, or find some people that do it. And like, does that career path allow for you to go to a school that's not Chicago or Stanford?
Yeah.
Answer is probably yes.
Yeah. I got to get that preconception out of the way, because like there are so many things that just exacerbate my high view of just the world and like from undergraduate studies. So I really appreciate it, Eric. Thanks.
I would also geography is an important thing. Check out I recommend Law School Transparency .com. You can take a look at like how broadly do graduates from a particular school go out. If you know that you're going to work in a city, then probably any school there is fine.
Yeah.
If you want the ability to maybe like go to somewhere else with your degree, then the national reach of the school, there are going to be way fewer schools that actually have that kind of.
That's the one concern I was just trying to address, but I'll stop you there. I'll let other people get some questions in. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, Jacob. Anything else from those of you still remaining? Doing good. All right. Well, again, I encourage, feel free to shoot me an email. My email is Eric that's Eric with a K at lsatdemon.com. You can hit me up there, or I'll see you in a couple of weeks at the next free one of these, or in one of my classes if you so happen to join up Demon Live. But until then, thanks everyone. Great chatting with you, and best of luck with your studies.